Meeting to order. This is the Hastings Planning Commission. This is a regular meeting. Today's date is August 22nd, 2016. Before we go to look at the approval of last minutes, we're just going to have a point of order here. Anybody who has the agenda in front of them, we're going to move item 5, which is not a public hearing, but we're going to move it ahead so that those applicants may, if they're present, would be able to get on with their evening here. So with that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes from our July 25th meeting. Commissioners, any changes or adjustments?
Motion for approval.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Those are approved. All right, so we'll move on to our next item, which was item number 5. Paul Peters, it's a variance, number 2016-35, addition of a carport within the minimum side setback, and the address is 295 West 15th Street. Mr. Fortney.
Thank you very much. The applicant would like to build an attached carport onto his home. The attached one-car garage is very small and cannot house his vehicle or boat, as the door is only about 6 feet wide by about 6 feet tall. The carport will be attached to the east side of the house in front of the garage. The applicant contends that if he were to build the carport to the side setback requirement of 7 feet, the width of the carport would not be wide enough to allow parking of the vehicle in there, and also be moving objects in and out of the garage with the, such as lawnmower, snowblower, with the vehicle in the carport. The lot is fairly small, very small. Actually, it's 3,900 square feet. It's 60 feet wide by 66 feet deep. The home is 1,026 square feet. The lot is one of the smallest in the city. The garage is currently about 7.5 feet from the property line, and the carport is proposed to be 4 feet 7 inches. The structure attached to the home, any structure attached to the home must be required 7 feet from the property line. The applicant is proposing to build a shingled roof over the garage, into the pitch of the garage as the carport. In your report are the various requirements for variance based on a 2011 state statute change that focused granting a variance more from proving a hardship and peculiarities to just showing that the applicant will have practical difficulties meeting the ordinance requirements. In this instance, staff believes that the applicant shows that practical difficulties in complying with the regulations are due to 3 items. The first is that it's an uncommonly small garage that doesn't fit a fishing boat or pickup truck. Number 2 is placing a carport over the driveway that meets the setbacks will block items from being removed from the garage like lawnmowers and snowblowers. There would be insufficient room to bring them between the posts of the carport and a vehicle or between a vehicle and the home. And third, circumstances, or another requirement is that the circumstances are not caused by the applicant. The house was built in this fashion in 1951 before the applicant purchased it. And finally, a variance can't alter the essential character of the locality. And the character of locality would remain unchanged because the carport is in line with the front building setback line and the existing homes on that block. It's an open structure and would not appear to clutter the side property line, and there's substantial vegetation along the side property line, creating an extra buffer from the neighbor. Staff recommends approval of the variance. Neighbors around the property were notified of the request, and we haven't received any comment from them. The applicant's here and can answer any questions you might have. Thanks.
Thank you, Justin. All right, this one, as I mentioned before, is not a public hearing tonight, so we'll go right ahead to the commission with any questions for staff or the applicant. Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Deaver.
Justin, can you just explain that drawing that's up there right now? Where I'm just trying to picture where the roof is going to be.
I'll go back to the picture. That drawing is kind of an aspect showing the house and the garage angled away from each other, so you can see, I think, where the posts would connect and everything. So it would be tied into the garage roof line here, and would come towards you and attach to the side wall of the house.
So it's just gonna slope forward.
Yes. Yeah, it'll slope in the same fashion as the roof.
And do you know, is it gonna basically extend towards the west there? Is it just gonna extend the same distance as the garage currently does?
So it'll kind of be located where this red square is. It'll be connected into the roof line where this gutter is shown on the aerial picture. The white line is I think the gutter on the roof. It'll tie into that area and it'll go north along the east wall and attach to the east wall of the house.
But the other side looks like it extends a little further than the current garage does.
Oh, correct. That's correct. The current garage is 7.5 feet from the property line, and the posts on the carport
4.5.
will be
Okay,
just over
okay.
5. And I don't believe there'll be much overhang past the posts.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Slayton?
in lieu of a variance, just a question here. Have we talked to the neighbors about purchasing an area of land off the east side of their lot so the variance wouldn't be needed? Would that be an option?
Yeah, I believe the applicant has talked to a neighboring property owner about purchasing land, and I think he can come up and explain how that went, maybe.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I am Paul Peters. I talked about purchasing 10 feet of land from the people to the east of me, and at this point, they're not interested. I spoke with the neighbor behind me who basically has a vacant lot. Phil Veith is his name. He was going to put some solar panels. Right now, he's interested, but that's as far as it goes. He's interested. So instead of waiting for everybody to make up their mind, I just went ahead with this and try to get something done.
Okay, made the effort. Okay, thank you.
Chairman.
Mr. Wallace?
I understand we sent out notification to the neighbor, and we've received nothing back. That's what you said, Justin. In your speaking with your neighbor, aside from the purchase, did your neighbor indicate any problem to you that he had building closer to?
Not at all. Where my driveway sits is John's backyard. And you can't see from this picture, but it's basically just a bunch of lilac trees and shrub. So he can't see my driveway hardly at all. The people directly across from me can't see my yard from their front yard because they aren't directly across from me. They're set to either side. The only thing sitting in front of me, as you can see from the picture, is Spring Street. There's nothing else there.
No, I just meant I want to be able to approve this, and I just wanted to make sure the one person that it would most directly affect is your neighbor, and if your neighbor had any objections. I understand not
Not at
wanting
all.
to sell his strip of land.
No, not at all. He has no objections whatsoever.
Thank you.
Has there been any concerns with the power lines there, or the easement or anything like that that would prevent you from doing anything here, or?
To the best of my knowledge, no. They're about 18 feet high.
Yeah, those are high lines, so, okay. Commissioners, any other questions for staff or the applicant? I would entertain a motion if there's no more discussion on it.
Make a motion for approval as presented by staff.
We have a motion for approval by Slayton. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a second by Alpa. Any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That prevails. All right, John, can you walk us through next steps on this one?
That'll go forward to the city council on Tuesday, September 6th.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move into our, and thank you, Mr. Peters, for coming tonight. We appreciate that. We'll move into public hearings. Mortensen Development, this is rezoning and site plan. This is item number 2016-34. This is the Allina Clinic, Highway 55 in General Sieben. Director Hinsman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commissioners. As you stated, there are two actions before you tonight. I'll walk through each of those and can answer any questions related to those. On your screens, you can show the location of the site in question. This is the site, 5.5 acres. It's located generally in the vicinity of Highway 55 to the south and Wal-Mart over here to the east. This road right here, which presently extends at this point, will be renamed Dakota Summit Drive, extend all the way up to 4th Street here, and then North Frontage Road will extend west to the extent of this development. This was all part of the Dakota Summit 3rd Edition. This was before you in late 2015. So the Dakota Summit plat, which is shown here, creates the streets, creates the lots for future development, and the development that we have before us tonight is on one of those lots in question. Part of that earlier approval was also an annexation approval. This land used to be within Integer Township. The city and the state have approved the annexation of the entire subdivision into the city of Hastings as it now sits. As you can see from the aerial photo, it's cultivated presently, rolling a little bit, but generally flat. The two actions that we have before you tonight are the rezoning of the property, which would be a rezoning from agriculture to PI, which is public institution, and then the site plan approval to construct a 50,000 square foot medical office building on the site. The applicant for this project is Mortensen Construction. Mortensen Construction would be the land owner of the site in question. Allina Hospital would be leasing the project from Mortensen and would be the user for the site itself. So looking at it, on the rezoning end of it, the public institution district we feel best meets the proposed use of the subdivision. When you take a look at the definition within the code, it's provided for land that is used for medical care, government service, community service facilities. Specific uses are included. So we take a look at the subdivision, we take a look at the city. The PI districts as they sit currently are the Allina Hospital site on Integer Road, some of the government buildings along Highway 55 by Dakota County, and some schools within the city, and the LeDuc Mansion. So this is generally a publicly held district. It has more limited uses than a general commercial district within there. So we are recommending approval of the rezoning, feeling that the use of the facility is consistent with the zoning district itself. We did have a public hearing notice as part of the rezoning application. Sent notice out, have not heard any comment back. Moving on to the site plan itself, this is how the property would be developed, a 50,000 square foot medical office building. To give some perspective, this is North Frontage Road on the bottom, Dakota Summit Drive, Wal-Mart is over here. 4th Street would be off the screen to the north. This lot does not go all the way to 4th Street. So the building itself will be located in this location with parking surrounding the building. Looking at access, there would be a singular access coming off of North Frontage Road, an access aligning to an existing road or entrance to Wal-Mart over towards the east on Dakota Summit Drive, and a new one here. So we are satisfied with the external accesses and internal circulation of the development itself. There would be a pedestrian access coming into the development here from Dakota Summit Drive into the site, as well as sidewalks and trails constructed as part of the road extensions in Dakota Summit 3rd Edition. As part of this as well, we also had a traffic impact study done by the developer. The results of the study are found within your packet. The proposed medical facility is expected to generate about 1,800 new trips on an average weekday, about 119 trips during the AM peak and 179 during the PM peak. So what the consultant did was take a look at the proposed uses of this facility and the intersections and roadways in the immediate area, looking at North Frontage Road, Dakota Summit Drive, General Sieben Drive, 4th Street, to see how the impact of this development would be in the functioning of those intersections and roadways. They did find that the addition of traffic from this development would allow those intersections and those roadways to continue to operate at acceptable levels. We did have some comments related to the traffic impact study where we just wanted to ensure a couple of things. One is that it did take into account the high school traffic, which may come forward. If this was done during the summer, it may not have taken that into impact. And looking at how other traffic from future development of the outlets to the north and the south may impact the subdivision. From a parking standpoint, the parking calculation on this is a little bit different than what our standard regulations would be. Within the zoning code, there is a provision to allow for a treatment of parking for uses that are not specifically mentioned based upon a use that would closely resemble it at the discretion of the director. So we took a hard look at this one. From an office standpoint, our office would be one space per 300 square feet. So a 50,000 square foot building would require about 167 spaces. Allina is proposing, or Mortensen is proposing 346 spaces, substantially larger than what our office code would require on that. And we also have a requirement under a code that parking spaces should not exceed the minimum by more than 20%. So under our code and under the office interpretation, the max they could put on the site would be just over 200 spaces. At Allina and Mortensen's behest, we did take a closer look at this. We looked at some other cities to determine how they determine office parking, if it was different, medical office was different than other office, and asked them to better explain the need for the site as well. From Allina's standpoint, they calculated the need of parking based upon having one space for every employee on a given shift. So 140 employees, 140 spaces for them. And then they were looking to have 2 spaces for each exam room. With 100 exam rooms on the site, that's 200 spaces, 340 altogether. They're showing 346 on the site. Further, they did provide us some calculations based upon other recent Allina projects in which comparable levels were shown, projects that were built in Buffalo, Isanti, River Falls, and Lakeville, which were included in your packet. So based upon this, the conclusions we had is it's certainly significantly larger than general office. Many other cities do provide a differentiation for medical office, which is closer to the totals that Allina is showing, albeit the Allina project still is a little bit more. The rationale for providing the parking by Allina seems rational, using the exam rooms, using the employee count. However, we're uncertain whether the full use of exam rooms is 100% at all times. And so looking at that, we're acceptable to the reasons for the rationale and the parking. However, we would like Allina and Mortensen to consider possibly proofing a portion of that parking. What I mean by that is the 346 spaces that they have, they would not immediately construct all of them at one time, that they may take a portion of those spaces, have approval to construct them if needed, but not construct them immediately, and kind of see how things go. If the need really is there, then they could go ahead and construct those projects, those parking spaces, without any further action by the city. And if they're not needed, well, then they wouldn't be constructed. Also looking at other ways that you can lessen the impact of the parking on the site. As you can see, the 5.5 acre site is predominantly covered with parking on there. And understand that Allina has their needs that they have for their development. But if they used impervious pavers or some other method, or reducing the parking as a proof of parking, it may reduce the impact on the site itself. Looking at the architectural standards for the project, they certainly exceed what we have within our code. The building would look something like this. It would be black brick and glass of construction, which meets the Class 1 requirements and Class 2 requirements of the code. From a landscaping standpoint, landscaping also exceeds the minimum requirements of the code as well. They do meet those with trees planted along the periphery of the site and within the parking lot areas themselves. The lighting plan also is okay. That does meet our requirement. We have gone through grading, drainage, and erosion control approval with the city engineer. They are currently reviewing plans, and we do have a condition set within the approval that the site plan would not be constructed until we received full sign-off by the city engineer on the project. So we are recommending approval of the site plan as presented. I did include about 14 conditions within your staff report. We do have members and representatives available from Mortensen Development tonight if you have any questions for them, and I can stand for any questions as well. Again, this is a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. All right, at this time, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come up and give any testimony, we ask for your name and address. And at this time, you can come forward if anybody wishes to speak. We'd also open up if any other representatives of the development would like to give any testimony at this time as well. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeremy Jacobs. I office at 700 Meadow Lane North, which is in Minneapolis 55422. I am the developer representing this project. I've been with Mortensen for some time and have had the opportunity to work with both Allina and the city on this project since January. It's been a great partnership. We've come a long way since then, and we're excited about getting this project in the ground. At current approval pace, we'll be mobilizing our construction team by October 4th, and we'll see Allina take occupancy third quarter or fourth quarter of next year. We're really excited.
Excellent, thank you. All right, if there's anyone else wishing to come up and give testimony? If not, we'll, going once, twice, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. All right, then we'll turn it over to the commission. Representatives are here and staff is here, and I turn it over to you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Alpine.
Sean, you had said that they're looking at possibly reducing the parking temporarily or until they determine their actual needs. Has it been identified which part of the parking will not be completed? And will there be a subsequent plan for doing something with that till such time?
Sure, I can offer some clarification on that. The plan that's presented here is showing the full extent of the parking, 346 spaces. Allina at this time is not proposing any reduction of those spaces or to proof any of those spaces for future construction. In our review of the parking, the suggestion that we made as staff is that Allina examine whether a portion of those parking spaces could indeed be proofed, which means not constructed immediately, but given approval to be constructed at a later time if needed. As far as where those spaces would be on the site, we haven't discussed specifically with Allina what that might include.
Would they just be landscaped at that point then?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, I'm just curious how it might change the traffic flow, if it would change the traffic flow in there as well, since the entrances are kind of spread out across the lot. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Kind of related to that, if they, are they going to build the ponds to full extent, regardless of what happens? Because they wouldn't need them all if they did smaller amount of parking.
Right. The ponding on the site has been designed to accommodate full construction as you're showing here. So
That's what they would do regardless of...
Correct.
Yep, okay.
Mr. Wallace.
Because of the way it's laid out, at least the way it's planned here with the entrances, as you were saying, I don't see proof of parking as being a critical aspect of this. I see no reason. It seems to me we're asking them to incur an additional expense by bringing construction back in again and creating a problem of traffic flow by delaying part of the construction till a later time. We've been given several examples where this is the plan they've been following with their other clinics, and they have you guys had any problems with your other clinics with any of that? I can't see that's a problem. So I guess I would not want to impose a restriction that I would not want to impose that as a condition of approval.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Deaver.
I'd be interested in some background on how how the size of the facility got to be what it is. I've been to both clinics in town here, and 100 exam rooms seems much bigger than what is currently in place today, and so I'd be interested in hearing what the future is and why this size of a facility.
Not sure if there'd be anyone from the applicant's team that may want to address that? All right, thank you.
So, also joining me tonight, I forgot to introduce everyone, but I've got Jenny Gila from HGA, who's the architect of the building, Leslie Sepamaki, who is with Mortensen Construction, and she's been doing all the pricing and estimating. Then Tom Thompson and Becky McManus, who are both with Allina. Becky is the clinic manager and has been firmly behind the scenes on all of the strategic decision-making on clinic size and many other decisions. So, Becky.
You're correct. The space would be bigger than that we currently have at the First Street Clinic. We have allowed for some growth. We have about 24 providers now, primary care providers, and our access, you maybe unfortunately know that we could use more providers. So we have growth for about 3 to 4 new providers. In the exam rooms, currently, we have about 2 rooms per providers, and we do find we could have about 2.5 to 3 rooms per provider to see them most efficiently. We've also added some additional care teams. We have some RNs that we'll be hiring, so they'll be able to help provide some patient education. So maybe a provider seeing a patient, the RN can be doing education visits with the patient. That would be taking up more rooms than we're currently using now. So that is the reason for the growth. Some additional space, some conference rooms that we have for us to allow us to be able to hold education sessions, group therapy. We're expanding our mental health program, as well as exploring some integrative medicine. So looking at potential acupuncture, nutrition consultative therapy, and all of those, again, acupuncture would require additional space.
All right. Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Slayton.
I have questions of a different nature than the building here. Because presently, if I'm not mistaken, you generally would have 2 to 3 people a day coming into the clinic for heart pains. And if it's a heart attack symptom, you're wheeling them right over to the emergency room. And I'm assuming that that will probably continue by moving this. So how would that relate to the citizens of Hastings who should go to the emergency room anyway, but don't, and now have to take an ambulance ride to the hospital for the added cost of $1,200 to $1,500? How is that effective for the city of Hastings? And if that would hold true, would the city need to provide another ambulance to take care of that issue? So there's added costs for the patients by the clinic moving. Would it not be better for the clinic to be built on the hospital land, which is just to the west of the position we're in right now? And have we looked at that?
Sure, if there's anyone from the applicant's team that might be able to address from the city's standpoint, no, we haven't. From a private owner standpoint, we examine the application that they come forward with. As far as how they come up with their locational decisions, I think they would be best to address that question.
You are correct. There are patients that do come to the clinic and need additional care, maybe would be better cared for in the hospital. We do have Dr. Kevin Best, one of our primary care physicians, so hopefully he can add anything on. We would care for them if they do come to the clinic, care for them as we do today, and if warranted, you're correct, it would require an ambulance ride if that's the safest method for the patient or the right place of care. We certainly don't want any additional costs. We hope to provide education to patients. Oftentimes they do call the clinic prior and can advise them go directly to the ER, but they have a great trust in our primary care providers, and so we hope to partner to give some education and get them to the right place. In terms of location, There are a lot of positives for us being right on the campus where we are today, and we don't want to give up that location, though there are benefits to being more visible. I'm amazed every day when I hear of people who aren't aware of where the clinic is today, even long-standing residents. So we do think there'll be a little bit more visibility and improved access to patients at the new location. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Dr. Best?
You actually stole most of all the things I was going to say, so I don't have a whole lot more to add. Just from I don't have statistical backup on this. I would argue 2 or 3 times per day is probably a little on the high side, but I think you're make some very valid points and things that we've thought long and hard about as well. It has been brought up and investigated and looked into whether or not our current location would be more feasible and better. Becky laid out the reasons that as all told, we decided to pursue this location instead. But I think the cost to patients is a very valid point and concern, and something we would have to try to look creatively at and try to figure out how we could best serve the patients. I think education plays a huge role in it too.
Because in today's added cost of medical and trying to keep the costs down, this is a huge added cost for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And we are lucky to have such a great system here in Hastings to take care of us. The hospital's been here since the 1950s and done an amazing job. And so everybody that works there is just, you can't say enough good about what we have here in Hastings.
I appreciate that. And I think you hit on a good point too, that Tom and I have certainly worked with a lot, that we have a unique opportunity within Hastings as a system where Allina owns the hospital, specialty clinic, and primary care clinics, where we can look creatively at issues like this about where we locate clinics, how we provide services, and aren't bound by some of the traditional, this has to be in the hospital, this has to be in the clinic, because at the end of the day, all of that revenue funnels up to under the same roof and the same tent. And then also close partnerships with Hastings Ambulance over the years too, of trying to figure out ways to, again, creatively figure out ways to solve these problems.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Commission, thank you. My name's Tom Thompson. I'm the president of Regina Hospital. These guys are just amazed that I've waited this long to talk. To your point, you know, I can appreciate that point, but honestly, in the past when we've had someone who's in having a heart attack in the clinic or some other very acute, get them to the ER type situation, the best practice actually would be to call the ambulance, even if it's across the street. So, you know, that doesn't happen very often, but it happens. So I think that is a very great question and important consideration. There's tremendous advantages of these guys being on this, as these guys have mentioned, for being on the same campus. But in addition to the visibility and really the sustainability of the whole system for us here in Hastings, that location is really important. And then there's probably a practical standpoint of footprint on our campus for holding that 50,000 square foot building and the required parking. We're bumping up against parking issues already more frequently than we want to.
There is parking.
Yeah.
Really,
And I'd also like to reinforce that the physician group that's moving to 55 is our primary care team, the primarily family practice team, and the complementary services around that primary care team. The other specialties are remaining in the Nininger building on campus.
okay. Thank you.
Let's add one more thing, and Tom spoke this a little bit from a land use perspective and kind of identification of the location. This project has probably been in the works for 3 years, a little more. Just the planning, the thought that has gone into it long before Mortensen was ever brought on board. After we were brought on board, we looked as a company at every other potential location in Hastings that might offer 5.5 acres of developable land. Doesn't exist. So this really is the best location for this clinic, given the visibility and given what Allina is trying to do within the community.
Mr. Wallace.
The cardiac issue is a very valid point. You know my background in EMS, 20 plus years, and we're kidding ourselves if we don't think cardiac's going to be the issue as the baby boom generation screams at retirement. So it is something to be considered, but having a facility with that many exam rooms is also something we need to consider. What I consider from the point of the planning commission is what is our footprint as a city, and what is the, I don't know, curb appeal for people coming in. And I guess I would like to see a professional medical clinic as you enter into our, as opposed to another shopping center or another strip mall. That's my 2 cents.
I think, I like the idea of creative solutions. Obviously, Allina, if, with increased visibility, more people are going to see it. If it was a major concern, I think we would have a solution before us tonight already. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, Allina does run, in other parts of the metro area, runs its own ambulance service, correct? So I think before we ever got to the point of the city of Hastings buying another rig just for that purpose, I think they would be providing that service. And I think the curb appeal. Unfortunately, I was in Inver Grove Heights at urgent care the other night. Fortunately, though, it was a very nice location, and it brought a lot. It brings a lot to that area. Along that note, though, in that location, I believe there are other businesses, correct, that are outside of even the medical field. I have some concerns with the zoning choice here that we're going after. I'm concerned that it's limiting. We hope that the city grows. That's what we're all moving towards. That's what, if we look back on the last 3 years, we see the big players that have been coming into town, and they've been betting on us. And so we hope to grow. If there was a reason or whatever happened that this facility had to scale back, I wouldn't want the zoning to limit the property owner's options. And then what I want to avoid is all of a sudden now, doesn't work, we're going to scale way back, and now we have a big empty building that's public institution. With like a government center, schools, those sorts of things, I'm not as worried with using the public institution. I know that we don't really fit in some of the commercial ones there. I have some reservations about that choice of zoning. My other concern is timing, though. I think we would almost be at a point where we'd need to talk about other zoning. And I talked about this when the YMCA was expanding on that. Perhaps there was a better zoning for that, but it fits for the use of what we're going to have here, and I foresee that medical changes as time goes on. We're starting to see it with dialysis centers popping up. Will it eventually come to a day where we have, and I don't mean to cheapen any symptom or the medical industry, but we have kidneys are us type of things, where it's very specialized, and you go to those specialty clinics for those things that you need. So I don't know. I don't know if any other commissioners had any concerns about that. Commissioner Bars.
John, can you walk us through, given that hypothetical situation, how hard it is to switch over zoning once it's set?
Sure, I'll give a little bit of background on the rezoning on the property. You are correct. The PI district, the Public Institution District, is more limiting than a general commercial district within the zone itself. With the comprehensive plan for the area, it's guided for mixed use, which means commercial, residential, medical, a variety of things in that area. This use could fit within a C4 district, certainly. We thought it was best represented by the public institution, but it's a call one way or the other on that one. In the future, if this facility was to go away and not be a medical facility and to be some other commercial facility outside the bounds of the PI district, it certainly could be rezoned. And given the surrounding property, its zoning, and the comprehensive plan, I can't imagine that would be difficult at all.
Chairman, so does the public institution zone, John, if, for instance, they would want to start to incorporate ancillary businesses in the facility that are medically oriented but are really more businesses, I don't know, like an independent pharmacy or medical supply house or something like that, yeah.
As opposed to like a Starbucks.
Or a Starbucks, I don't know.
Sure.
Does the public institution
Allow
not
for
allow
that?
that?
Sure, I believe it would. Under the uses permitted, they address incidental uses within the building that they are provided. So essentially, if it's a medical facility primarily and it has these other facilities that aren't medically related but are serving the facility, yes, they would be allowable.
And are the outlots, are we also going to zone the outlots as PI?
At this point, the outlots are not included, so those would come back at a later date.
So they'd remain agriculture for now?
Correct.
Chairman, has the whole partial of the outlots been annexed into the city also?
It has.
Along with, so the whole area, yes.
Correct.
Would not we then be considering this a spot zone within the area?
You know, because of the size of this facility itself being 5 or 6 acres, I don't know if it would be a spot zone. Spot zoning would typically be on a much smaller basis, so I don't think so.
Would there be any argument for, because I looked at Inver Grove Heights, and I believe the zoning there was a PUD that had included that. Were any of you involved with that? Have any insight as to what that zoning was? It wasn't commercial, it wasn't, it seemed to me that it had, because it's definitely commercial, it's not residential, but I think there is some high-density residential there. You have the landscaping, Gertens there. So it's definitely interesting how other cities have done it.
Chairman, not to jump around, though, I just wanted to revisit to say that I concurred with Commissioner Wallace's comments with respect to parking. I just think that, given the fact that they're requesting double the ordinance, they know their business model probably a lot better than we ever will, that it seems to be in line with the research they provided to move forward with that variance.
I would echo that, and I wanted to thank you for bringing us back to that. Was there any thought put into the impervious surfaces or any other solutions with that? I know that can greatly adjust the cost, the budgeting on that. But if you wouldn't mind giving us some insight on that.
Well, there's certainly some technical pieces to that question that I would defer to Leslie and Jenny to answer, but big picture, we did consider and have considered impervious pavers. There are two costs. One you mentioned, which is the upfront cost, but it's actually more of a maintenance concern in general. We've seen in this climate that the impervious pavers long-term don't perform particularly well with the freeze-thaw cycles. And so as a long-term building owner, we know that we would be in there spending a lot of money on an annual basis, kind of on upkeep. So we'd prefer to avoid the impervious solution if we could.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, glad we brought this up again. And actually, when I opened this drawing, I mean, I was just struck. Now, I know you guys have a reason for this, and I can agree with that. It's justifiable, and it makes sense for what you're doing. But I was just struck with this sea of pavement. And it's not that there's anything wrong with your design or the fact that, again, you've substantiated it, but right next door is another sea of pavement. And I'm just kind of throwing my 2 cents out there. It just seems a little bit ludicrous. Now, you guys, I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong, but you're justifying what you've done. Is there any, I don't know, can we share parking? I don't know how realistic that is, but I don't see those stalls used much in that corner of Walmart ever.
One
You know-
Friday a year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I see paved across the street over with the other strip on their side. I mean, that seems to be utilized and filled quite frequently. It just makes me crazy to see all these stalls go in next to all these empty stalls that don't get used.
It's a really fair point and a good question. I would address it in three ways. The first is that in this context with the medical office building, in most cases, your patient needs to be as close to the building as possible for immediate access. And that's always a driving concern. The second is that, and this point came out on a conference call that we recently had, and I thought it was a really good one. If you're going to Walmart and the lot's full, and you're looking for a gallon of milk, you can probably come back in 5 minutes, no big deal. But if you go to your medical office building and the lot is full, you got a problem, because you can't just come back. You've got an appointment in 10 minutes. You need somewhere to park. And so we need a generously sized parking lot to avoid the situation where you might have two parents coming in from different locations to ensure their child gets to the doctor on time. So although we have a parking lot that's sized for exam room turnover, assuming one person in each exam room at the same time with a follow-on appointment, there certainly would be many situations where you have a father coming from one side of town, a mother coming from the other. So you have two cars for one patient. The last point is, that other lot is owned by Walmart. I'll just leave it at that.
Enough said.
No, and I agree. Thank you for saying those things. I mean, I agree, and I really do think you have sized the lot probably properly. It's really a different use. And you might have 2 or 3 people coming for any one patient, and I could see that, because I'd be one of those people, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it might not be so much about your development, but maybe what happened with Walmart? You know? And I don't know if that's something the city can learn from, or, but that's my 2 cents, 3 cents now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Alpa.
just to comment on that a little bit too, while there is a sea of asphalt, at least this has a nice landscaping plan to go with it, so it will not look like the Walmart parking lot. It'll look a lot nicer.
I'm looking for the first developer to put in the solar pavers that we're going to see on Route 66 here pretty soon. We might want to have a little case study before we go spending money on that, but I think those are all very valid points with the parking. Any other discussion or questions on this? I see Commissioner Deaver has the photo plan up, so.
I do. A couple questions about the lighting. It looks like there's only 2 lights on the facility itself, aside from the signage, I suppose. Is that true?
I don't know if I included the lighting plan in here. I don't think I did.
Looks like I see marker lights along the sidewalk and then just really 2 lights in the back of the building, maybe?
Hi, I'm Leslie Sepamaki, Mortensen Construction. So there, I don't know if I can use this mouse, yeah. I think there's at least 4 along here, and then there's 2 along the backside here. The canopy has down lighting, and then I think that's it that we've showed on this photometric.
Okay, so pretty minimal.
Yep.
And all downward directed, I assume, right?
Yep.
And then it looks like the 2 parking lot lights that are on the south side, on the east side of the lot. So I'd be worried about future development over there, because it looks like the photometric plan has it over the half-foot candle that's, I think, the limit for the borders.
Okay. We'll take a look at that.
If you could?
Yep.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussions on lighting or other topics?
John, in the packet, it states that site plan review regarding the streets, that they're all private, no new public streets. And then later in the packet, it talks about the building occupancy certificate tied to the frontage road in Dakota. So is that city?
Sure. Let me provide some clarification on that. Everything that you see within the site here, this will all be private parking lot areas owned by Mortensen. The roads, North Frontage Road, Dakota Summit Drive, eventually 4th Street to the north, those will all be public streets. Those are dedicated with the Dakota Summit plat and are going through construction plan approval.
So but the building occupancy is tied to completion of those, but the city's handling that
Exactly.
construction?
Yeah, I think there's a condition on the site plan approval that ties the recording of the 3rd edition plat to establish the streets with the site plan approval, and then the completion of the roadways prior to certificate of occupancy.
Perfect, thanks.
Sure.
The second part of your question was, I think, who's coordinating the construction for the roads? John can certainly speak to the history of those discussions, but as a part of our development agreement with the city and a third party, Consemius, who owns the land and the existing outlots, will all, I say, Allina, Mortensen, and Consemius are all paying for a portion of each of those roads. So as a part of our development, we're paying for those improvements.
Would anyone else like the floor for discussion or questions? If not, this is one of those where if a motion is to be made, there are kind of two items in one, and it's to the person making the motion, it's their discretion on how they wish to proceed. Commissioner Wallace.
Are you referring to the motion, one being the rezoning and the other being the approval?
The site plan approval, exactly, yes. Essentially, you would need one to have the other, but as a form of decorum, that would be up to whoever makes the motion, so.
I'd motion for approval for both.
We have a motion for the approval of rezoning to P1 and also to approve the site plan as presented, correct?
Correct.
That's the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Alpa. Is there any discussion on that motion before the body? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails.
And then this will proceed to the City Council on September 6th to order the public hearing for the rezoning. And then we will have the public hearing for the rezoning and the site plan approval before the council. I believe it is September 19th. Thank you.
All right, we thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.
All right, we had one other item under public hearings tonight, but it has been tabled and postponed, and Director Hinsman will give us a little update on that.
Sure, I can give a little background. We do have a public hearing scheduled for Zale Group LLC for a conditional use permit to construct within the floodplain district. Zale Group is proposing a fiber optic line construction which would go from Denmark Township to about 5th Street in Hastings. It would include a boring underneath the Mississippi River. The impact within the Mississippi River requires a conditional use permit. In dealing with Zale, there's some changes that may be coming in their plans, so we did hold off on the public hearing itself. We did advertise for it in the paper, but we did not send any notifications, so we will re-notify when that comes back up.
Thank you. All right, so then next item would be Original Hastings Design Standard Review Update.
Yes. The original Hastings design standards were created as an effort to protect the older residential center of the city by ensuring construction of new houses and alterations of existing ones maintain the distinctive features of the neighborhood. The standards regulate the general character and architectural form based on characteristics of the existing neighborhood and elements listed in the ordinance. Over the past several years, there's been few applicants in front of the Planning Commission and City Council until recently, which kind of drew attention to and raised some questions about the necessity and if folks were aware of it. The record shows that property owners were notified of a couple open houses and some public hearings concerning the drafting of those regulations. There probably wouldn't have been any notification after the adoption outside of a published notice in the newspaper. From my experience with applicants over the past 8 years that I've been here, I found that generally they're surprised about the requirements and didn't know they were in a special district. Based on direction from the Planning Commission, staff sent out a survey to 450 property owners affected by the standards and the approval requirements. We received 45 responses back, which is a return of about 10%. Respondents were allowed to fill out the survey online with a Survey Monkey, or by mail, email, telephone, or drop it off at City Hall. I'd say probably 3/4 of them were done on Survey Monkey, and most other ones were mailed in or dropped off. I did get one by email and one by phone. They are also required to state their address on the surveys. The survey included a map and a brief description of the original Hastings Design Standard Ordinance. And I'll go through the questions now. Were you aware that your property was in the OHDS area? 53% said no. Do you believe the OHDS area has helped maintain your neighborhood's character over the past 12 years? 59% said no. Do you believe the OHDS regulations are necessary to maintain your neighborhood's character? 56% said no. Would you have these OHDS regulations? Would these regulations have discouraged you from making improvements to your home? 72% said no. And do you believe that the original Hastings Design Standard regulations should remain in place? 52% said yes. What I found a little distressing was the majority of the respondents didn't know about them, and they did not think they'd helped, didn't think they were necessary. 1/3 of them stated that they wouldn't have made improvements to their home because of them. But however, a slight majority, 52%, said they should be left in place. I'm sure you've probably read the comments that were in the back of the staff report, so you might understand a little more about some of the feelings behind the numbers. And I also did put a map in the back of the staff report showing years that houses were built. I think that was a question that was raised at the last meeting where this was discussed. So that's all that staff has prepared as an update. We can answer any questions or listen to discussion.
All right, Commissioner, if we want to continue our discussion on this, definitely can go ahead. I just might jump in here quick. The survey kind of showed us what we're, I think, anymore. I think we're becoming, as America as a whole, we're kind of becoming the 49% to 51%. So I'm glad we had the response that we did. I think we get a good sense of where we stand. I hope everybody did have a chance to read through the comments. Some insight there, both sides of the discussion. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Slayton.
it would seem that when a house goes for sale, the realtors really should do a better job of explaining to buyers what's going on in this district, and that does not seem to be happening when 50% of the people responded do not know that they're in a special district. How many people answered the survey?
45.
45?
Mm-hmm.
45. How many houses in the district?
450.
450. So
Well-
10%.
Yeah. I mean,
10% response.
there's actually about maybe 60 more than that, but a lot of people own multiple houses, and so we just sent them one survey.
Okay. There seems to be a lot of rental in the area up there.
I don't know that I agree with that necessarily.
Well, I've knocked every house up there this year. And I can tell you, there's a lot of rental up there and a lot of people who tell me they're rental.
Okay, well, I'll defer to you.
I've knocked at a lot of houses, and, but if 10% are answering and 50% of 10% don't know that do not know that they're in a special district, somehow we need to do better in getting that out there. Whether it's through the realtors when the houses go for sale, or more articles within the paper, somehow.
I had a chat with some people that live in the live in this design area, and there's some good points brought up that, you know, that we discussed at the last meeting, you know, that we are essentially putting covenants on people, but what are they getting for that? Other than consistency in their neighborhood and the conservation of some of these homes. But for some people, that's, if half of them don't care about that, then they're not getting anything for the limitations that are being imposed upon them. But I think to Commissioner Slayton's point, and this was brought up in that meeting, and maybe it's been mentioned here before as well, I think the city would be well served to really start marketing more or less. I mean, we own and control the street signs, correct? And there would be cost, and I don't necessarily like spending people's money, but it's easy to spend other people's money. I guess it'd be my money too, but to have markers on the top of our street signs that say, hey, you're in the historic district, or you're in the original design area. And I think, again, this is difficult because it's not the historic district. And that's where it becomes very, very difficult. What I saw from this survey is that the people that don't want any regulation in their life whatsoever made that clear, and they're going to be that way regardless. So then I look to the people that want this design standard to do something for them, and based on some of these comments, I don't think they're feeling that it does that. But to what end can you accommodate them without it actually being the historic district? So for me, that becomes the real difficulty here. And again, I'm a proponent of a review process of this. I think and I think we've run into this outside of this district with our, like the Vermilion Corridor plan. It's not an ordinance, so we have wiggle room to make things work, and that's brought some people to town that have invested in our community. But again, does that, I mean, the city spent money on that plan, and to what extent do we, I'd like to see what the review process would look like with some community involvement, and what can we do to make that happen.
Well, we do have some homeowners out there who have indicated they'd be willing to work on this and bring it back up. It's been, what, 20 years, John?
About 10.
About 10 years since this was done. And with any policy, it periodically gets reviewed. Comprehensive plans are brought up every 20 years, actually, I believe it is. It's time to look at this again from people who live out there.
And when we do that, we need to find a way to get, we need a dichotomy on that panel. We need people that aren't necessarily for it, people that are for it, so that we get a real sense of the representation there. I think this commission, if you look at this commission as a whole, is a very good body to talk about this. Without pointing fingers or naming names, we have a commissioner who lives in a very historic home and is involved with another very historic building in town. I know for sure we have two commissioners that live within this district in which we discuss. So I think it's a great time to have this conversation. I'm wondering what kind of workshop we can do, what kind of interaction we can have with the city council on this, what we can do to get the community involved. I know all those things take time, but I would like, because it's not the historic district, but I think this can be a real asset to the community if we do it right. But I also, my dad gave me a really good analogy. We have an old pickup, if you'll indulge me for a minute, that has been in the family for a long time, and he owned it prior to my grandfather owning it, and it had that patina to it. It's an old 1954 International pickup. My grandpa took it and fully restored it, and so it's a really nice pickup. If you put both those pickups side by side, they would both have character and charm and value to the people that had that it brought a nostalgic appeal to them. If you brought in someone that took that truck and chopped it into pieces and made it into a rat rod, it would still, I think if you put all three together, you're going to have some enthusiasts that don't like that, but I think everyone can look at it and appreciate what it is. I think that's a really good analogy for these homes in this district. We need to allow people to make these their own home. But we definitely want to be careful of the infill development there. There, I'll get off my soapbox.
Well, with any commission and anything you're going to put out there, it all is based on who's willing to sit down and serve and put their time into something. And it's not always easy to get people who are willing to spend that time. We are, obviously. So if we're going to do this, obviously we have to do another mass mailing to this district to make that happen and see how many people are willing to come to hearings and work on this. And I think it's well worth doing. We have to. It's not something we want to shove to the side here.
Yeah. And I think we can do, let's get creative, community neighborhood meetings. Appoint one person per block to do what they can to get input and involvement from the people in the neighborhood. Those landlords that, it's a profit center for them, and I can appreciate that. But we need their input. It's their property, and they probably want it to look nice. It's how you keep your rent up. Yeah, I agree. Any other comments, or anyone have wishes for next steps on this? Or
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Deaver?
I totally agree. I think we should take another look at this. I'm not prepared to talk to it tonight. I do want to comment, John and Justin, I thought this was very well done, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it. Thanks.
If there's nothing else on that one, then we can move to other business.
Well, let me just provide a summary of what I've heard tonight, just so that I got clear direction from the commission. It appears that we want to explore this a little bit further. What I'm hearing from the commissioner comments is you would like to have the public, the neighborhood, review this, and then have the commission review this after that occurs? Is that what I'm hearing, or is there more commission review? Are we looking for more commission review prior to going out to the public?
I think we want to get I think the survey did a good job of showing us that there's a definite divide in the train of thought in this district. So I'll speak for myself, but my sense is that we want more input from those people We want more, I think one-on-one would be difficult, but we want to, I think we almost need to workshop, how are we going to get out there and talk with the people that this would affect? I mean, we live in a world of social media where I'm the click of a button away from Japan. We ought to be able to figure out a way to get a pulse on our people right here. Commissioner Wallace?
I'm just wondering what the action item is here that we're looking for. Are we looking for more people participating? Are we looking to change something?
I'm missing that too.
This is a review, but it doesn't give me an action item or anything that I really need to do as a planning commissioner. And that's what I'm wondering, I think we need to know what our action items are before we know how we proceed, don't we?
And what is it we would be expecting the citizens to do? Are we expecting them to look at how this design standard is set up, and is it agreeable, or should it be changed? I guess I'm kind of at a loss too. What is it exactly we're looking for? I mean, I know there's been some questions in the past with some requests that have come up, or a request that came up that kind of brought this to light. But I'm a little confused now. We've got the survey results. Didn't really tell us a whole lot. I mean, so I'm kind of confused as well.
Would it do us some good to have a joint workshop with the Historic Commission that reviews these houses, this area?
With that, it's a little bit different, and Justin, you could probably address that better than I do, working with the HPC, but the areas within the OHDS that we're reviewing tonight are not under the authority of the Historic Preservation Commission. If you look at the map on the back side here, all the ones in black here are areas within HPC jurisdiction. And so the areas that surround it are under OHDS. And Justin, I'm not sure if you had any other comments or related to that?
Sure. Well, the HPC is in favor of the Religious Hastings design standards, but it doesn't really give the main protection that they would like to see, and that's preserve the properties from destruction and loss. And that can only happen under the purview of the HPC by state statute requirements. And so that's the reason why a lot of people refer to this area as a conservation district, and they kind of see it as a minimal level of preservation. They see it as you might not be able to stop them from replacing the windows or changing the siding, but you'll save the building. But the actual, the practice, because of the statutes, actually doesn't allow that. And that wasn't what they all believe, everyone believed, I think, when this was set up. That just came up more recently when somebody did want to tear it down, and we were going to have them come through this process here. And the city attorneys looked into the statutes and said that there's no protection, there's no ability for us to say no. I think they do have different ways of doing conservation districts that maybe could be under the purview of the HPC and have a more of an effect to that, but it might not help with infill, which is, I think, the original reason this started up.
And it was, right? I mean, the whole reason this thing exists is because there's a duplex on 6th Street that got built that a lot of neighbors didn't like because the size and the scale of the thing was bigger and broader than everything else in the neighborhood. That was the thing that precipitated the creation of this. And that's, I think, the people that I've talked to, at least, that's the main thing they're concerned about, was to make sure that, the size and scale of the infill projects that do take place within this boundary, at least, fit the neighborhood, and that doesn't happen again. And whether or not I'm torn by that, because I would think that everybody in the city of Hastings, not just within this district, would have that same desire. Nobody wants the house next to them torn down and something, ugly and, in their eyes, ugly and huge or different than the entire neighborhood built.
Edina.
So, anyway, as I said earlier, I'm not really prepared to talk about this tonight, but I do think we should continue to talk about it. And I do think that as much as involving the citizens is a good idea, I think you're going to end up with the same comments that you've heard here, which are, stay out of my life. It's my house, I own it, and I should be able to do what I want to with it. And I'm all for maintaining the historic character of my neighborhood. And I'll do what I need to do that. And so we're going to end up with this split. And so I think it's just going to be on us, if we want to see changes made, to just take a leadership role and decide what we as a commission are willing to do to facilitate any change that we think is appropriate in this ordinance, and propose those changes.
So I guess to clarify, my thought of having community involvement with this is not necessarily to rewrite what we have or to abolish it or anything like that. It's to get at the heart, get at the few core items of what this is. And Commissioner Deaver, I think you really nailed that it's the infill development is the real concern. What leads up to that infill development, I think, is a part of it as well, which can be when properties go into disrepair and then all of a sudden there's a condemnation, or that disrepair leads to fire and all of a sudden now you're building new. That being said, though, there's really no limitation on what the materials that people can do to work on their homes. So I don't think that's an issue. We're not talking HPC here. I think we're some joint conversation with them. There are experts on this. We defer to them on issues in this area. They would be good people to talk to, I think. I just wanted to clarify what I meant by the community involvement is to really get at the heart of what are people's concerns. I think we can say what it is, and it's some don't want to be regulated whatsoever, and others want to preserve. And I can definitely appreciate the one comment I read in there that why should there be imposition on them so that as everyone else drives through the neighborhood they don't even live in, they get to go, wow, Hastings feels really neat, and then drive to their brand new home on the other end of town. So,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, if I may make a suggestion here, what it might be helpful is if we were to come back with an action plan of next steps as far as how the public might be involved, some of the questions that we may ask, and maybe some of the questions the Planning Commission may want to ask as well, and bring that back for a later discussion, and that'll help us to pinpoint where we may go next on this.
I think that's fair enough.
Okay.
I had one comment about, I live pretty much in the geographic center of this area. And it's really difficult to walk through and find a theme other than older homes. So if we're really gonna talk about rebuilding homes and what homes have to conform to, or something, imposing some type of thing like that, it's gonna need to be a pretty broad definition if we're gonna say it has to match the neighborhood. Because even in my non-historic street, walking down it, there are different styles from different I mean, you can look at the colors. This is perfect. You can see, how many different areas we're talking about, and it's throughout. This isn't predominantly one color. This is throughout and spaced around. So, I mean, if we're going to start thinking about, well, materials have to be, not materials, but the style has to be this, the size has to be this, it's going to be pretty difficult. And that's something we need to consider when we're considering which action plans we want to take.
I would concur, that it seems like even right now, the definitions it's like this broad sort of suggestion, the houses kind of have a porch and they have a fence and they look like this. I don't think, a lot of the infill buildings fit that definition. I don't think the ordinance has any teeth to make them fit that definition. I just wonder why sometimes. I mean, I also live in it. I'm kind of for it. But I can't help but wonder why.
No, and I'm not necessarily against it, I don't want to spend my time if there's no action plan to come out, you know, out of it other than a great discussion. You know, we can have that over coffee, I guess. as opposed to-
And I'm just wondering if the definitions need to be changed or refined, or, I mean, it seems to be really a gushy thing.
I think to validate our time here, I think we can, you know, take what has been said here tonight, I like the idea of bringing back some action items with that. I'm glad we had discussion. I think it moves it, at least we're moving forward. If at some point we say, no, it's fine, we don't want to talk about it anymore, I think it moves it forward. It's better, I'm glad we had discussion on it, better than just saying, oh, there's the results, great, all right, let's go home. So I definitely appreciate the conversation tonight, on all counts. So, any other discussion on that? Otherwise, we can move on to other business. All right.
Okay, under other business, we had a city council meeting last week on the 15th, had a couple of items on there. One of them was the ordinance amendment opting out of the temporary family health care dwellings was passed unanimously by the city council, so that exemption now is in place. We also authorized a purchase agreement for the sale of land at 1100 Vermillion Street. This is the city-owned parcel that was better known as 11th Street, just south of the Walgreens property. We did authorize signature of that purchase agreement. The entity, ENR Properties, has also made purchase of the adjoining vacant lot owned by Heiliger. There used to be a house there that was demolished a few years back, and would be combining those two parcels, about a half acre altogether, into a development site. Also looking potentially at the property, house that's there right now, further to the south, next to the Walgreens area. As far as the type of development at this point, he hasn't publicly identified that. That would be coming forward as part of the site plan approval. From talking to him, they're moving pretty quickly on this one. We should have something, we think we're going to have something back yet this year for approval, which will give us more identification of what that will be. So we had that. Also, a number of agreements related to the art space project that continues to move forward. There's a groundbreaking coming up. I think I sent this over to you, coming up on August 30th, which is next week, I think 3:30 in the afternoon on the site. So they're moving forward on that project. On the Hudson project, we hope to have something back to you in September to look at the landscaping and parking on that one. So that continues to move forward. And as far as our next meeting goes on the 12th, is that what it'd be? No, it'd be, I guess it would be the 11th or 12th. 12th, yeah. I don't have anything scheduled at this point. The Zale project may be coming back if they do decide to, with the changes they were proposing, and we'll continue to work on the OHDS. So that's all I had.
Excellent. Any other business from the other commissioners?
Can I just ask a question? John, did the city council have any comments about developing an ordinance of our own to handle the temporary housing type of thing?
The city council didn't have any discussion on that at the meeting, no.
Okay.
Any other business? Just once again like to take a minute to thank John and Justin and all the city staff for all that you do for putting all this together. And also to Katrina for sticking it out tonight, thank you. And Lindsay, if you're hiding in the back room, thanks for getting us out to, thank you both for getting us out to everyone out there who's listening. With that, if there's no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Deaver, do you have a second?
Second?
Second by Johnson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.